The first time I was charged rent to live in my own bedroom, it came in the form of a crisp white envelope. No warning, no discussion, just cold ink and bold type. My name was printed right on the front, centered and clinical, like it was a notice from a landlord instead of my own parents. I'm Rachel Morris. I was 23 years old, living in the small town of Dyersville, Iowa, and working 2 jobs just to help out. My mom handed me the envelope during Sunday dinner. Dad didn't even look up from his pot roast. "Just some adult responsibilities," Mom said cheerily, like she was giving me a birthday card. Inside was a printed invoice. Base rent $900. Utilities $250. Household contribution $150. Total $300 due on the first of every month. I stared at the page while my mashed potatoes went cold. "What is this?" I asked, my voice already trembling. My father cleared his throat without looking up. "Time you learned what the real world costs." I blinked at the number. Bailey doesn't pay rent. That got Mom's attention. She set down her fork and smiled in that way she always did when she was about to say something poisonous, dressed in politeness. "Bailey's still figuring things out. You've got 2 stable jobs, Rachel. You're capable. This is how you grow." 2 jobs, a 9 to 5 at the local credit union and a 6 to midnight waiting tables at Rusty's Diner. No weekends, no holidays, no sleep. I worked harder than anyone else in that house. Bailey. He woke up at noon and live-streamed his video games until 3 in the morning, but I was the one who needed to learn. I wanted to argue, to scream, to cry, but I knew how that would go. Instead, I just asked, "When does this start?" "Next week," my dad replied like he was reading off the weather report. "Late payments will have a $75 penalty." I nodded, folded the invoice, and excused myself. In my room, I sat on the edge of my bed and opened my banking app. I had $164.93 in checking. Rent alone would leave me in the red. I should have felt rage, but all I felt was exhaustion. Bone-deep, soul-numbing exhaustion. That night, while everyone else watched TV, I went online and started looking for extra shifts. I didn't ask for help. I didn't protest. I just did what I always did: survive. But as I stared at that invoice again, a whisper curled through the back of my mind. If they treat you like a tenant, maybe it's time you act like one. I took out a new notebook from my drawer, wrote Room 2A rent ledger on the cover, and logged every charge I was given that week. Groceries I bought but didn't eat. Utilities I didn't use. Trash I didn't make. Every dollar they demanded from me I recorded. Not for pity, not for proof, but because something inside me had cracked open. They wanted me to learn responsibility. Fine. I would learn it better than they ever imagined. If you've ever been blindsided by the people who should have protected you most, if you've ever had to pay for your own place at a table you helped set, I want you to stay with me. This isn't just another family drama. This is what happens when the daughter they underestimated becomes the woman they never saw coming. If you've ever been told to just grow up by someone who's never had to lift a finger, leave a like and keep watching. Because I promise this story you'll want to hear how it ends. The first red flag didn't wave. It whispered quietly, slyly through a notification from my credit card company. A $63.49 charge to some anime streaming platform I'd never heard of. I blinked, confused. Thought maybe it was a billing error. Until I opened my account and found a pattern: Steam purchases. Gaming bundles. Random digital add-ons with names like Dragon Vault Expansion and Super Pixel Bundle. I don't play games, but my brother does. Bailey had been living at home rent-free since he dropped out of community college 2 years ago. His career path, according to Mom, was still in development. Translation: he played games, streamed on Twitch to a handful of followers, and occasionally posted YouTube clips with titles like Top 10 Epic Wins No Cap. I scrolled through the list of charges, my stomach dropping with each line. They totaled over $400, and every single one was charged to my card. The same card I used to buy groceries, to pay my half of the utilities, to keep myself from drowning. I marched downstairs, phone in hand, and found Bailey exactly where I knew he'd be: sprawled across the couch, surrounded by Dorito Crumb's headset on, eyes locked to the glowing screen. "Bailey," I said sharply. He didn't look away, just gave a lazy, "What?" "You've been using my card." He blinked at me, paused his game with a dramatic sigh. "Chill. Mom said it was okay." I stared at him. Mom said it was okay. To steal from me. "It's not stealing. You've got like 2 jobs. I'm building something here. Networking, building followers." My jaw tightened. I can't afford this. He laughed. Actually laughed. "You're so dramatic. It's not like you're broke." I turned and walked straight into the kitchen where Mom was doing dishes. She looked up surprised. Everything all right, sweetie? Bailey's been charging hundreds of dollars to my credit card. For games, for anime, for junk. She gave me that same rehearsed smile. He told me. I assumed you knew. It's all under the family account, right? No, I said firmly. It's under my account. My name, my debt. Mom put down the sponge, drying her hands slowly. Rachel, you need to understand. He's trying to make something of himself. A little support right now could make a big difference. He's not paying rent. He's not paying for groceries. He's not working. And now I'm financing his hobbies. Her tone cooled. Don't be selfish. That word again. I'd been called selfish more in the last week than in my entire life. And all because I was asking not to be stolen from. I returned to my room, that notebook still open on the desk. Rent ledger. I flipped to a new page and added a heading, unauthorized charges. Beneath it, I wrote each purchase from Bailey Data Mount platform. Line after line, the total rising like a thermometer in July. They wanted to treat me like a tenant fine, but no landlord pays for their neighbor's pizza and Xbox Gold membership. This wasn't a family anymore. It was a power structure, and I was the one footing the bill. I'd always thought the worst kind of betrayal came with raised voices and slammed doors. But this was quieter, more suffocating. The kind of betrayal that smiled at you over mashed potatoes and thanked you for being so mature. So I started writing everything down. Every dollar, every comment, every microcut disguised as care. Because I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was documenting. And trust me, when the storm came, I wanted every receipt. You ever had someone smile at you while picking your pocket? Ever been called selfish for drawing a boundary? If so, tell me your story below. You're not alone in this, not by a long shot. It's strange how quickly love can become leverage. The following Sunday, Mom knocked gently on my bedroom door just before dinner. Her voice floated in with that same performative warmth she used when guests were over. Honey, would you mind coming down a bit early to help set the table? I opened the door, nodded without a word, and followed her downstairs. The table was already halfway set. Bailey lounged on the couch, controller in hand, volume up. He didn't glance up when I passed by with the silverware. At dinner, everything looked normal. Gravy boat, mismatched napkins, the faint hum of polite conversation. But I could feel the tension knotting under my skin like a pulled thread no one wanted to touch. Until my father finally did. So he said, cutting into his roast, "We're raising the internet bill this month. It's only fair. Streaming services, gaming usage, it all adds up." I choked back a laugh. You mean Bailey's gaming usage? Dad looked up, mildly annoyed. It's shared usage. I don't even use the internet at home anymore, I replied, keeping my voice level. I'm never here. Mom jumped in, her voice sugary sweet and tight with reprimand. That's not the attitude we expect from someone living under our roof. My hands tightened around my fork. Under your roof, paying rent and covering charges I don't create. Bailey didn't even pause his chewing. Man, you're always complaining. My mother's gaze hardened. Don't speak to your brother like that. He's under enough pressure trying to build his future. His future is funded by my credit limit, I snapped. The silence that followed was heavy. My father cleared his throat, placing his fork down with deliberate calm. Rachel, this family has always supported each other. It's time you did your part without resentment. Are you hearing yourselves? I said, breath shaky. You're weaponizing the word family to justify robbing me blind. Mom's expression didn't change, but her voice dipped into that dangerous, condescending calm. You're not a victim, Rachel. You're just struggling to understand the value of contribution. That broke something in me. The word contribution rang in my ears like a gavel. I stood up slowly, pushing my chair back. You're right, I said softly. I am contributing. I work 16-hour days to contribute. I gave up my weekends, my social life, and my peace of mind to contribute. And all I've gotten back is a balance due. Dad shook his head, already picking up his knife again. Sit down, Rachel. Let's eat like a family. I don't think I remember what that feels like, I murmured. And I walked upstairs. In my room, I opened the notebook again. This time, I labeled the next section emotional charges. I began listing moments, comments, gaslights, manipulations, as if each one cost me something. Because they did. Respect, boundaries, trust, love. I realized then that my family's affection came with a price tag, and I'd been paying it in installments my entire life. You see, the real heartbreak doesn't come from being betrayed. It comes from realizing the people who raised you were never planning to carry you. They just expected you to carry them. And if you've ever been made to feel guilty for standing up for yourself, especially by the ones who claim to love you, then maybe you understand why I didn't sleep that night. Maybe you've been told that speaking up makes you dramatic, or that setting a boundary is the same as being cold. But maybe, just maybe, standing up is the first step toward walking away. And if you've been there right on the edge of letting go, share your story in the comments. Let's show the world how many of us were brave enough to stop paying for love we never owed. I didn't say another word to my parents for 3 days. Instead, I got to work. Every night after my second shift at the diner, I'd come home, shower in silence, and curl up on my bed not to rest but to plan. I started using my notebook as more than just a rent ledger. It became my lifeline, my roadmap. I drew timelines, mapped out projected savings, tracked every tip, every expense. I kept receipts like they were sacred scripture. I wasn't just documenting anymore. I was building an exit. My plan was 2 years, 24 months of relentless work, cutting every corner, skipping every luxury. 2 years to save enough to get out for good. I didn't know where I was going yet, but I knew what I was leaving behind: a system that drained me dry and called it parenting. Every decision from that point forward was filtered through one question: does this bring me closer to freedom or keep me trapped? I canceled my streaming accounts, stopped buying coffee, packed cold leftovers in dollar store containers. I even downgraded my phone plan, barely enough data to check my bank app and my credit card statements. I became invisible on social media. I stopped replying to group chats. Naomi, my best friend since high school, texted me a dozen times. "Miss you," she said. "Everything okay?" I left it on red. How could I explain that I was living in a house where I had to pay to exist, that I was financing my brother's video game habit, while my own dreams were rationed out in stolen hours between shifts? Dreams? That word felt heavy. There was a time when I had them. I used to paint portraits, cityscapes, abstract stuff that made people stop and feel. I wanted to open a small studio one day, teach kids, sell prints. But I gave that up the moment Mom slipped me the first invoice and told me I needed to get serious. So I got serious. Serious enough to become a shadow in my own life. Each day, I wore a different mask: friendly bank teller by day, tired waitress by night. No one knew what I was really doing: stockpiling every spare dollar, hoarding evidence of every injustice, building a quiet arsenal in the form of savings accounts and spreadsheet tabs. Then one night, I came home from work to find Bailey on the couch again, his headset glowing, 3 empty Red Bull cans at his feet. The TV volume was loud, laughter spilling out from whatever he was streaming. And there it was, my card again, a pizza box from that same place he always ordered from. My name on the receipt. My bank notification pinging my phone with another $22.99 gone. I didn't yell, I didn't confront. I just opened my notebook. October 17th, large meat lovers pizza, unauthorized, $22.99. Another line, another log, another brick in the wall. Because by now I understood something. They weren't going to stop using me, so I had to stop letting them. If you've ever had to swallow your pride and stay quiet, if you've ever kept your head down while someone else stood on your shoulders, then you know how this part feels. That slow burn, that silent vow, that promise to yourself that this ends with me. And if you've ever lived like that, like a ghost in your own home, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments. Let's build something louder than silence. Together. I remember the exact moment the switch flipped. It was a Tuesday morning and my legs were aching from a double shift the night before. I'd barely slept. My uniform still smelled like grease. But I showed up at the credit union early as always. Joseph, my desk neighbor, and the only person who noticed I was slowly withering, was already there. "You look like you got hit by a truck," he said, sliding a protein bar across my desk. "That truck's name is my family," I muttered, forcing a smile. "And apparently it's still charging tolls." Joseph didn't laugh. He just looked at me. "This isn't sustainable, Rachel." He was right. My back ached. My fingers were stiff from counting cash all day and carrying trays all night. My eyes stung from staring at numbers that never added up. But my savings account was growing. Not fast, not dramatically, but steady like dripping water that eventually fills a canyon. That night I came home late again. Bailey was up, of course, playing some space-themed shooter game. He didn't look up as I passed by, but I noticed the energy drink cans had multiplied. So had the takeout bags. On my desk upstairs, a new invoice waited. This time it wasn't rent, it was a shared utilities adjustment. An extra $40 added for increased energy use. I stared at the paper, then at the 3 monitors Bailey had humming in the corner of the living room, like a spaceship engine. The math wasn't subtle. They weren't just squeezing me anymore. They were squeezing me dry. But instead of rage, I felt something sharper, cleaner, clarity. They were never going to stop. Not because they hated me, not because they were evil, but because I made it easy. Every time I swallowed my pride, every time I paid a fee, every time I stayed quiet when they justified theft with the word love, I was training them to take more. So I made a decision. If they were going to teach me adult responsibility, I'd show them exactly what I'd learned. That night, I stayed up until 3 a.m. creating a new spreadsheet. Not just expenses this time strategy, a budget, a timeline. I researched property law saving hacks, even ways to create anonymous LLCs. I wasn't just escaping anymore. I was laying groundwork for a takeover. The next morning, Joseph caught me scrolling listings online. "What are you up to?" "Plotting a quiet rebellion," I said. He didn't even blink. "Let me know if you need a co-conspirator." I smiled, not because it was funny, but because it was real. Someone finally saw me. You see, when people keep taking from you, they're not just draining your bank account. They're draining your identity. They're making you forget that you have power. But here's the thing. No one tells you about quiet people. We don't stay quiet forever. And if you're reading this right now, nodding because you know, because you've been there or are there, then take this as a sign. You're not powerless. You're just gathering evidence. And one day soon, that evidence will become your weapon. If you've ever worked yourself into the ground just to stay afloat, if you've ever carried people who should have been standing beside you, let me know in the comments. And if you're still standing despite it all, maybe hit that subscribe button too. Because this is just the beginning. I didn't expect to find out by accident. It was a quiet Thursday evening when Emma Warner, a real estate agent who'd lived across the street from us since I was a kid, came into the diner near closing time. She was always kind to me growing up, slipping me caramel candies from her purse during block parties, telling me stories about the houses she'd sold. That night, she ordered a glass of wine and lingered after her meal. As I cleared the table, she studied me in that way real estate people do, like she saw more than just a tired waitress in a ketchup-stained apron. "You doing all right, Rachel?" she asked gently. I forced a tired smile. "Just a long shift." "Your mom tells me you're learning financial responsibility," she said with a twinkle in her eye. "Helping with rent utilities? You've grown up so much." That phrase made my stomach twist. I tried to laugh it off. "Yeah, something like that." Emma leaned in, swirling her wine. "Funny thing, though, I was helping your parents refinance their mortgage last week." I stopped wiping the table. "They're 5 months behind on payments," she continued, almost like she regretted saying it. "But from what I hear, they're collecting rent from you." I blinked. "They are." Emma tilted her head, watching my expression shift from confusion to realization to fury, all in about 3 seconds. "You didn't know," she said softly. I shook my head, jaw clenched. "They've been using my rent to float the house, while letting my brother live for free." I shouldn't have said anything, she started. "No," I cut in. "I'm glad you did." Emma stared at me for a moment. Then her tone shifted, businesslike, sharp, deliberate. "I've been in real estate for 20 years, she said, "and I've helped more than one young woman in your position. There are ways to buy property quietly, through LLCs, cash deals. It can be done." I stared at her, barely breathing. "I don't have enough saved," I whispered. "Maybe not yet," she replied, "but now you have a target, a real one." The rest of the night felt like I was walking underwater. My thoughts kept looping. They were 5 months behind. They used my rent to cover their shortfall. They still had the audacity to charge me late fees. I went home that night and stood in front of our house for a full minute before going in. The porch light flickered. The living room glowed with the familiar blue light of Bailey's gaming cave. Inside, I could hear his laugh echo through the walls. Upstairs, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my fists clenched at my sides. They weren't just irresponsible, they were deceitful. They didn't want to teach me anything. They just wanted me to fund their mistakes without ever giving me the dignity of the truth. And suddenly my 2-year plan felt too generous. I pulled out my phone and messaged Emma. "Tell me more about that LLC." She replied within minutes. "First step, get a P.O. box. Use it as your business address. And whatever you do, don't say a word to them." I pressed the power button and sat in the dark, the phone cooling in my palm. For the first time in months, I wasn't just surviving. I was building something. If you've ever had to learn the truth about your own family from a stranger, if you've ever realized that what you called home was actually just a facade built on your labor, I see you. You're not crazy. You're not dramatic. You're awake. And if that resonates with you, maybe take a second to share this story, because someone out there needs to hear it before they sign another check to people who are quietly drowning them. By the following week, I had a new name, North Cedar Holdings LLC. It sounded official, cold, impersonal. Perfect. The mailing address, a dusty little P.O. box in the corner of a UPS store 2 towns over. No one knew about it. Not my parents, not Bailey, not even Naomi. Only Emma and Joseph were in the loop, and even then just enough to protect the plan. My savings weren't enough to buy a house, not yet, but with Emma's help, I could be ready when the right one showed up. She was scouting pre-foreclosures in quiet neighborhoods, texting me listings in code like we were planning a heist. Because in a way, we were. Every Sunday, I still handed over my $1 $300 envelope at dinner. Every month, I paid my late fees if my bank deposit hit on the 2nd instead of the 1st. I smiled when my mother reminded me to be grateful for the opportunity to learn. I nodded when my father said the utilities had gone up again. And all the while I recorded everything. Each charge, each penalty, each lie. They thought I was just getting used to being squeezed. But I was building a case. Then one evening, Emma sent me a listing. 3-bedroom foreclosed, priced well below market value. I have a feeling about this one, she wrote. My hands trembled as I clicked the link. It wasn't perfect, it needed work. But it was within range, just barely. Joseph caught me staring at the listing the next morning, the screen open on my work computer. You're close, he said. A few more months. Closer than I ever thought I'd be, I replied. That night I came home to find Bailey on the couch again with a half-eaten pizza box and the TV blaring. He looked up just long enough to grin and say, "Thanks for dinner, sis." My credit card buzzed 30 seconds later. $28.97 Pizza Hut. That was it, no more. I walked to the living room, planted myself in front of the screen and crossed my arms. You need to stop using my card. Bailey didn't even pause his game. Mom said it was fine. Well, I'm saying it's not. You don't get to decide. I do get to decide, I snapped. It's my money, my card, my debt. Mom appeared in the hallway holding her phone like a sword. Rachel, don't be dramatic. Your brother needs support right now. He's networking with other streamers. That's important for his future. Then he can network using his own money. Family helps family, she said flatly. I laughed. Not loudly, not wildly, just enough that it scared even me. You're right, I said. Family does help family. I've been helping this one for years. But let me ask you something, who's helping me? They said nothing, because they knew the answer. That night, I updated my spreadsheet. I opened the house listing and saved it to my desktop. Then I created a new folder titled Phase 2. This was no longer about running away. This was about taking back everything they stole. If you've ever looked someone in the eye and realized they'd keep draining you until there was nothing left, if you've ever had to pretend everything was okay just to buy time for your escape, I get it. You're not weak, you're calculating. And that kind of strength, it's quiet, but it's devastating. If you're watching this from a place that doesn't feel like home anymore, share this story. Not for me, for the version of you who still thinks they have to pay to be loved. Because freedom doesn't knock. Sometimes you have to build the door. And I was nearly ready to walk through mine. For weeks I became a ghost in my own house, quiet, obedient, invisible. I paid every invoice, smiled at every manipulation, nodded when my mother reminded me to be on time with the rent. I did everything right, because I needed them to believe I had given up. Meanwhile, I was executing the cleanest long con I'd ever run, the calm, dutiful daughter on the outside, and a woman sharpening her blade on the inside. By this point, my notebook had outgrown itself. I'd switched to spreadsheets, color-coded, tabbed, and backed up in 3 places. Each sheet was labeled rent paid, late fees charged, utilities I didn't use, Bailey's charges. There was even a tab just called The Lie, and under it, every moment they'd pretended I was being taught, when really I was just being used. But the more I tracked, the more I realized I wasn't just collecting proof. I was documenting a legacy, a system of control passed down from 2 people who convinced me love had a price. That being good meant being quiet, that my role in this house was to fund their comfort and never ask for mine. That system was about to collapse. The shift happened the night Emma called me. I just spoke to the bank, she said, her voice low. The listing's still available, and they're open to a cash offer through your LLC. My heart raced. I stared at the number in my savings account, just barely enough. It would leave me with almost nothing after closing costs. No cushion, no safety net. But it would be mine. A place where no one could slide an invoice across the table and call it love. I said yes, and from that moment on, every interaction at home became theater. When my father announced a $60 utility hike because Bailey's building his gaming brand, I nodded and paid. When Mom scolded me for not cleaning the dishes fast enough, I apologized. When Bailey asked for $20 for gas but used it for takeout, I gave it, then logged it with a screenshot. They thought I was weak. But I was documenting their downfall transaction by transaction, lie by lie. Then one night something strange happened. Bailey genuinely asked, "Why are you always working?" I stared at him. He wasn't mocking. He looked curious, maybe even confused. I said nothing, just walked to my room and opened my laptop. In the folder marked Phase 2, I created a new doc, Final Moves, because I could feel it coming. The silence before the crack, the moment before the dam breaks. And when it did, I wouldn't raise my voice. I'd raise the rent. You ever had to pretend to be small just to finish building something big? You ever swallowed the scream just to stay one step ahead of people who'd never hear it anyway? Then you know what it means to weaponize silence, to turn every insult into fuel, every injustice into evidence, every "you're being dramatic" into justification. If you're watching this and nodding quietly to yourself, you're not alone. Some of us weren't born with power. We had to document our way into it. And when the time comes, we won't just walk away. We'll own the damn building. If you've ever had to stay silent while waiting for your moment, share this video. Let others know what power looks like before it explodes. Because my moment, it was closer than even I realized. No one noticed when my closet started thinning out. One shirt gone here, a pair of shoes missing there, framed photos replaced with empty hooks. I packed in silence, always at night, loading 1 or 2 boxes into my trunk between shifts. Every item labeled, every move, precise, no panic, no hurry. Because this wasn't an escape. It was an exit strategy. Joseph helped when he could during his lunch breaks after the bank closed. He never asked too many questions, just lifted boxes, made space in his truck, and said, "You're almost free." I don't think he even realized how much that meant to me. Freedom. The word didn't feel like a fantasy anymore. It felt like coordinates, like something I could touch, measure, purchase. Then one evening it all collided. At dinner, Dad cleared his throat and said it again. "You're 2 days late on rent, Rachel. That's another $75. He said it like he was reading the weather, like it was inevitable. I didn't flinch. I just reached into my purse, pulled out an envelope, and slid it across the table, just like he had done to me all those months ago. He opened it slowly, expecting cash. What he found instead was my notice of intent to vacate. Silence fell like a dropped glass. Mom froze mid-bite. Bailey looked up from his phone for the first time in ages. Dad's face twitched, jaw tightening. "What is this?" "I'm moving out," I said simply, effective immediately. "You can't just—" I interrupted, and I am. I stood calm and steady and looked directly at Bailey. "By the way, the internet's going down tomorrow. You'll need your own login." My father's hands curled around the paper. "If you walk out that door, don't expect to come back." I smiled, really smiled. "I won't." That night, I loaded the final boxes into Joseph's car. My parents didn't come to the door. Bailey didn't say a word. Only my mother texted, "This is childish. What about family?" I blocked the number. That first night away, I slept on a futon at Joseph's sister's guest room, surrounded by plastic bins and cold pizza. It was the best sleep I'd had in months. In the days that followed, the silence from my parents turned into noise calls from relatives, passive-aggressive Facebook posts, even Naomi. She texted, "Your mom is freaking out. What happened?" I didn't reply, because I was done explaining myself, done paying to exist, done being their personal ATM with a smile. Then the message came that made it all worth it. Emma texted me a single line. "Offer accepted. The house is yours." I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. It was done. The house I would have never been allowed to own in their eyes. The future they told me I wasn't ready for. The door they refused to open, I had just bought the hinges. Sometimes when people cut you out for standing up, they don't realize they're giving you the gift of clarity. They lose access, you gain peace. And if you've ever walked away from the place you once called home and discovered yourself in the quiet that followed, I see you. If this part hit something inside you, if you've ever whispered, "I'm done," and finally meant it, tell me below. Because that whisper, it's the first word of your next chapter. The morning after the house officially became mine, I stood in my new living room. Bare walls, second-hand furniture, and sunlight I didn't have to ask permission to enjoy. It smelled like old carpet and fresh paint. But to me, it smelled like freedom. Emma called while I was unpacking a box labeled Kitchen Essentials. "They filed a complaint this morning," she said, her voice half amused, half bracing. "Your father came to my office demanding to know who Vanquish Properties is. He's connecting the dots." I took a slow breath. Good. "You sure you're ready for this?" she asked. "Once the rental agreement hits, it's public record. The name on the deed is Vanquish. But the rent hikes, the enforcement. They'll feel it, personally. That's the point, I replied. I hung up and opened my laptop. On the screen were 2 documents, the mortgage transfer letter and the new rental agreement addressed to my parents from Vanquish Properties, LLC. Market rate rent, due on the 1st of each month. Late fees apply, no exceptions. I didn't create these terms, I learned them from them. Later that evening, Joseph stopped by with Thai takeout. They're panicking, he said, setting the bags on my barely stable coffee table. Your dad came into the bank trying to get a second mortgage. He won't get it, I said. They're 5 months behind and now they've lost their rent buffer. I know their credit score. Joseph just stared at me. You really did it. I nodded, opening a carton of noodles. They thought they were preparing me for the real world. What they didn't realize is that they were preparing me to own theirs. Right on cue, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my mother. This is insane. What are you doing? We're your family. Then another from Bailey. My car just got declined. Dad says we're getting evicted. Is this real? I put my phone down and looked out the window. For the first time, I didn't feel guilt. I felt grounded, sure, sharp. This wasn't vengeance. This was justice wearing her quietest shoes. I opened my email and attached the spreadsheet I'd kept for the past 2 years. Every late fee, every payment, every utility charge I never used. At the top I wrote, about those adult responsibilities. I scheduled it to send to my father's work email the following Monday, just in time for the start of a new month, a new cycle, a new system, one I controlled. The next day Emma called again. They showed up, where? My office, all 3 of them. Your dad, your mom, and Bailey. Your father slammed his hand on the desk and demanded I tell him who you were working for. What did you say? I smiled and said, I represent Vanquish Properties, sir. And then I handed them the rental contract. I laughed, really laughed, loud and real and almost feral. And I asked. They stormed out, but they'll sign it. They have no other option. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the same table I used to scrub down for Sunday dinners, and wrote the final line of the rental contract in my neatest handwriting. Rent's due on the 1st, late fees apply. I wasn't just leaving the game anymore. I had become the game master. If you've ever been told you owe us everything by the same people who gave you nothing but invoices, if you've ever wanted to rewrite the rules, entirely drop a comment. This one's for you. And if you believe power belongs to those who earn it, maybe hit that subscribe button too. Because from here on out, we're not just telling stories, we're reclaiming them. The day the foreclosure notice hit, I could feel it all shifting: the world, my family, my life. Everything I'd been building up to for the past 2 years was finally coming to a head. It was one thing to quietly make the decision to leave, to take control of my finances, but it was another to see my parents staring at the document that would undo everything they had built on my back. That morning, Emma sent me a photo of the for sale sign that had gone up in front of my parents' house. She'd sent it with the message, just got word, it's listed. I stood in my kitchen, phone in hand, staring at that photo. The sign, bright red against the front lawn, seemed to taunt me. But more than that, it felt like a door opening to something I'd been fighting for. No more invoices, no more late fees, no more excuses. Just me standing alone in the future I had bought with my own sweat and sacrifice. But then came the texts. One from Bailey, one from my mother, one from Dad. Bailey, why did you do this? You can't just leave us like this. We're family. Mom, Rachel, this is not how we taught you to handle things. This is childish, selfish. Dad, we've been trying to help you grow, and this is how you repay us with this. I read the messages in a daze. It was the same pattern as always. Guilt, manipulation, gaslighting. But this time something was different. I didn't feel it anymore. Their words didn't have weight. Not when I had something solid to hold on to. I wasn't their ATM. I wasn't their scapegoat. I was free. But freedom isn't always as sweet as it sounds. That afternoon I called Emma. Are they really going to do this? I asked. They're desperate, she replied. But this is your moment. You've done what you set out to do. The house is theirs if they want it, but the price is their dignity. I smiled to myself. My hands were steady, my mind clear. Let them figure it out, I said. I already have. Later that evening, I saw my father's car parked in the driveway as I pulled up. My heart started to race. He was there. He'd come to get me, to drag me back into the mess they'd built for me. I walked inside. The air was heavy with tension. My mother sat at the kitchen table, eyes red from crying, while Bailey stood awkwardly by the door, avoiding my gaze. "You can't just leave Rachel," my father said, his voice tight with anger. "This is our house. We've spent years paying it off, and now you're taking it from us." I stood still, feeling the weight of their accusations press against me. But this time it didn't hurt. This time I was ready. "You've been taking from me for years," I replied, calm but firm. "Charging me rent while Bailey does nothing. Using my money for your debts. And now that I've had enough, you expect me to keep playing along." They didn't respond. The silence was deafening. Finally, I reached into my bag, pulled out a document, and slid it across the table. "That's my mortgage transfer notice," I said. "I'm the one who owns this house now, not you." For a moment, none of them moved. It was like the world stopped. My father looked at the papers. His face went pale. My mother's lips trembled, her hand reaching for the papers, but then pulling back. Bailey just stood there, looking lost. "What do you mean you own this house?" my father asked, his voice shaking. "I bought it. With the money you thought you'd squeezed out of me for the last 2 years. Their faces fell. They looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. And in that moment I realized something. The system they'd built around me, built on manipulation, guilt, and greed, was no longer holding me captive. I wasn't a part of their cycle anymore. I was free. "I'm leaving, Dad," I said softly. "But I'm not coming back. You're going to have to figure this out on your own." I turned and walked out of the room, feeling a weight lifting with every step. As I walked out the door, I heard my mother's voice, faint and broken. "Where are you going? What about family?" I didn't stop. I didn't turn around. Because for the first time I knew what it meant to take back control of my own life. I didn't need to explain anymore. The truth was simple: family doesn't take. Family helps. And I wasn't going to help them take from me anymore. If you've ever been made to feel guilty for putting yourself first, or if you've ever had to reclaim your independence from people who were supposed to love you, leave a comment below. Let's show the world how far we're willing to go for our peace. And don't forget to subscribe, because the best is yet to come. They didn't leave quietly. A week after I dropped the mortgage transfer notice, my father showed up at my front door with a grim face, a manila folder, and Bailey standing sheepishly behind him. I hadn't seen either of them in person since the confrontation in the kitchen. I opened the door just enough to peer through the security chain. "Can I help you?" I asked flatly. Dad held up the folder like it was a peace offering. "We're not here to argue. We just want to talk." Bailey looked at the ground. I let them in, not out of obligation, but because I wanted them to see. The place I built. The life I carved for myself from the wreckage they left me in. Clean walls, real furniture, and air that didn't feel thick with guilt. Dad sat down at the table and slid the folder across to me. "It's everything we've got," he said. "Mortgage balances, bank statements, the utilities. We're underwater." I opened the folder. It was worse than I expected. Missed payments stacked across several months, credit card debt, spiraling foreclosure proceedings already underway. "We're trying to fix it," he added. "We're willing to pay rent. Just not market rate. We can't afford that." I stared at him for a long time, then looked at Bailey. He still hadn't spoken. I turned back to my father. "So let me get this straight. After 2 years of draining me, charging me late fees, calling me selfish, now you want mercy." "It's not mercy," he said, his tone rising. "It's understanding. We're your family." Bailey finally looked up. "Please, Rachel. I got a job. I'm trying now." Those words should have meant something. But they didn't erase what came before. They didn't undo the sleepless nights, the debt, the manipulation. And they sure as hell didn't cancel the invoices they'd sent me under the guise of life lessons. I took a breath. "I'll make you a deal." Their eyes lit up. I pointed at Bailey. "You want to stay? Fine. The garage has a pull-out couch. $1, $200 a month. Due on the 1st. Late fees apply." Bailey's face went red. "You're joking." "No," I said. "I'm just giving you the same lesson you all gave me." My father's jaw tensed. "You can't do this. We're not tenants. We're your family." I stood slowly and walked over to the filing cabinet near the door, pulled out a folder of my own, slapped it down in front of them. Inside, every receipt, every rent payment, every fee, every pizza charge, steam purchase, internet bill, all paid by me. "I was your tenant," I said. "You made me one, and now you're mine." The silence that followed was different this time. It wasn't surprise, it was realization, cold and absolute. "You have 30 days, I continued. "Find another place or sign the rental agreement from Vanquish Properties. But there are no discounts, no favors, and no more calling this family." Bailey looked like he'd been punched. My father stood, his hands shaking. "You've changed." No, I said quietly. I finally stopped pretending. They left without another word, the folder of evidence still sitting on the table. The door clicked shut behind them, and I locked it twice. I stood there for a moment, forehead pressed to the door, breathing deep. Not in anger, in relief. They'd finally seen who I'd become. Not their daughter, not their scapegoat, not their safety net. I was their landlord. If you've ever had to teach the people who raised you what respect really means, if you've ever had to use the rules they made to free yourself, then tell me in the comments. Share it for someone who needs that courage today. Because sometimes the best way to heal is to hold people accountable with their own words. And if that resonates with you, stick around. We're just getting started. 3 weeks later, I got the notice. An eviction defense lawyer emailed me a formal letter my parents and Bailey had lawyered up. Not to fight me, no, that would have been laughable. They were trying to claim undue hardship to delay their eviction from the property I legally owned. After all the bills I paid, all the lies they told. Now they wanted pity from the court. And somehow that was the moment it hit me they hadn't changed. They weren't sorry. They were just cornered. I sat on my couch, letter in hand, shaking. Not with fear, with fury. The entitlement was deeper than I thought. They still believed I owed them something. Still believed family meant one-way sacrifice and I was always the one bleeding. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I emailed the lawyer back with a polite, concise reply. Vanquish Properties is within full legal right to proceed. Tenancy was informal, now formalized. Hardship claims are noted, but we will not be subsidizing. Thank you. Then I sat in silence, staring at the wall. The old me would have tried to explain herself, offered compromises, felt guilty for being cold. But the version of me now, I was done explaining why I deserve peace. Later that day, I met with Emma, who by now had become more than just my friend. She was like a mentor, sharp, calm, and fierce in a way I had only just begun to understand. They'll try to drag this out, she warned, but the law's on your side. I nodded, but I couldn't shake the ache. They still think they're the victims. Emma leaned in. They're losing control, and people who rely on manipulation hate losing control. That's when they scream the loudest. Guilt you the hardest. I swallowed. I didn't want it to come to this. She smiled, not unkindly. You didn't bring it here, Rachel. They did. You just finally stopped lying down. That night, Bailey texted. You're really kicking us out after everything we did for you growing up? I stared at the message. And then slowly I typed back, I paid for every pizza you ate, every game you played, and every time you blew the electric bill, streaming late at night while I worked. If that's your definition of family, then maybe being family means nothing at all. He never replied. The day before the official lockout date, I visited the house. The porch light was off. Inside, the air was stale. A few boxes were packed, but it was clear they'd waited till the last minute hoping I'd cave. I walked through the living room, the same place I once cried into a $300 rent notice from my own father, and placed the final notice on the counter. As I turned to leave, I paused. One photo remained on the wall, a framed image of all four of us at my high school graduation. I was the only one not smiling. I took it down, and I left. If you've ever had to break your own heart to finally protect it, if you've ever chosen peace over approval, this is for you. And if this story is hitting something deep, leave a comment. Let it out. Because someone out there needs to know they're not alone in walking away. And if you believe stories like this deserve a voice hit, subscribe. Stick around. There's power in telling the truth, especially when it shakes the house down to its very foundation. The official move-out date passed. No more texts. No more voicemails. Just silence. And that silence was deafening. I waited 3 days before sending in the locksmith to change the locks. When I arrived to inspect the house, I walked through every room expecting something petty. Damage, graffiti, trash. But the house was pristine. It wasn't guilt that made them leave it clean. It was pride. The kind that says, we'll leave, but we won't give you the satisfaction. Still, I didn't care. Because as I stepped into what used to be Bailey's room, the same space where I once left him dinner plates outside his door when he ignored me for days, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just release. This was my house now. No longer a prison of obligation. It was a home I'd earned one rent check, one betrayal, one sleepless night at a time. A few weeks later, I converted it into a women's co-op home. Yeah, I could have sold it, rented it for profit. But I thought of all the women I'd met through online support groups, women who had been cast aside by their families for refusing to pay their dues. Women like me. So I founded something new, Hearthlight House, a place for young women with nowhere else to go. First month free, no deposit, and absolutely no guilt disguised as gratitude. My lawyer Emma helped me draft the charter. Joseph helped fix the plumbing, and I helped myself by breaking the cycle. One evening, as I was repainting the hallway walls, a soft cream color, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Rachel. It was Bailey. I froze. He cleared his throat awkwardly. I saw a post about Hearthlight. You're running it. Yeah, I said cautiously. Why? A long pause. It's cool, that's all. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I didn't get it back then. I didn't rush to answer. I let the silence sit between us like a truth too heavy to lift. I'm not asking for anything, he added. I just wanted you to know. This time I nodded more to myself than him. Thanks, I said simply. Take care, Bailey. I hung up, and that was enough. Not a reconciliation, not a fairy tale ending, just closure. A quiet, dignified ending to a chapter that nearly broke me and the beginning of something better. That night, as I stood outside on the porch of Hearthlight, sipping tea under the soft amber light, I finally exhaled all the way. If you've ever had to build something beautiful from the wreckage of people who never thought you could, if you've ever turned pain into purpose, tell me your story in the comments. Because I see you. I was you. And if you believe healing doesn't always come with a bow, but it can come with a boundary, hit subscribe. Let's tell the stories no one else dares to say out loud. 6 months after Hearthlight opened, we had our first house dinner. 5 women, including me, gathered around a scratched but sturdy table we'd salvaged from a second-hand store. There was lasagna, garlic bread, and soft music playing from a little Bluetooth speaker someone had left behind. No one said grace. No one raised a glass. But when one of the girls, Maya, laughed at something I said, I realized something profound. It was the first time in years I had heard laughter in a house that felt like home. No tension. No walking on eggshells. No waiting for the next sarcastic comment or guilt trip disguised as concern. Just laughter, light and unafraid. And it wrecked me in the best way possible. After dinner, as I stood in the kitchen scrubbing dishes, Maya came up beside me. She was 19, had fled a toxic family dynamic that sounded eerily familiar. A father who charged her rent at 17, a mother who said emotional support was a luxury, and a brother who took everything without a second thought. I used to think something was wrong with me, she whispered, because I couldn't keep pretending. I handed her a towel. Same, I said. She looked at me with glassy eyes. But you seem okay now. I paused. I'm not okay because they changed. I'm okay because I stopped expecting them to. That was the lesson I wish someone had told me years ago. You don't need their apology to heal. You don't need their approval to grow. And you don't owe them access just because you share a last name. Later that night, I walked through the quiet hallways of Hearthlight Light's dim rooms, full hearts slowly stitching themselves back together, and I realized what I had built wasn't just shelter. It was sovereignty. And I would protect it with every boundary, every contract, every ounce of truth I'd earned. As I turned off the last hallway light, I whispered something to myself, not for drama, but for closure. This house doesn't owe them anything. Neither do I. And if you've ever rebuilt your life from a place of silence, if you've ever created peace, not because they gave it to you, but because you claimed it with your own bare hands, then this story was for you. If you're still watching, thank you for being here. Thank you for holding space for stories like mine. If this story stirred something inside, you don't just scroll past, leave a comment, even if it's just a dot. Because silence kept too many of us trapped for too long. And if you believe in stories that speak truth to pain, in the power of chosen family, and in the courage to walk away, subscribe. Stay with me. Let's make Hearthlight a place that lives far beyond just these walls. Sometimes healing doesn't look like hugs and happy endings. Sometimes it looks like a new lock on an old door, a boundary where there used to be begging, a quiet dinner surrounded by strangers who now feel more like family than blood ever did. I used to think I was cruel for walking away. That choosing peace meant I was betraying the very people who raised me. But what I've come to understand is this. Loyalty that costs your mental health isn't loyalty, it's bondage. And family that demands sacrifice but never offers safety isn't family. It's just control with a softer name. I didn't fight them. I didn't destroy them. I just stopped letting them destroy me. And in that space, in that silence they left behind, I found something they could never give me myself. If you've made it this far, I want to say thank you. For listening. For holding this story with care. Maybe you saw yourself in pieces of this. Maybe you're still in the middle of it. If so, take this as proof. You're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to start over. You are not selfish for choosing peace. You are not weak for being tired. You are not cruel for saying no more. If this story touched something in you, even a whisper, leave a comment. Let's speak what they tried to silence. And if you believe in reclaiming your life and choosing yourself unapologetically, hit subscribe. Let's keep building spaces like Hearthlight together, where healing isn't just a dream,